My boyfriend and I were invited to a birthday party, one of his friends from his contract job. Most of the people there were his close friends. Me, I barely knew anyone in the room. Still, things were going fine. He was clearly enjoying himself, laughing, catching up with everyone. I was trying to be social, even though I'm naturally pretty introverted. I was just starting to feel comfortable, finally warming up, chatting, sharing a few stories from my school days. And that's when it happened. Right in the middle of my story, my boyfriend interrupted me, casually, almost playfully, and said, "You know my name is prettiest when she shuts up." The entire group burst into laughter. He was smirking, grinning, like he'd just delivered the punchline of the night. Then he kept going. "You guys don't know what I go through. She never stops talking. I swear, sometimes I just tune her out for my own sanity." And everyone just kept laughing. Meanwhile, I sat there, humiliated. I'm not the loudest person in the room. I'm not the one constantly trying to take up space. But when I do start to open up, when I feel safe enough to speak, this is how I'm treated. I tried to brush it off. I forced a smile, pretended it didn't sting. But I went quiet after that, really quiet. I couldn't bring myself to talk much for the rest of the night, not when I felt like I was just the punchline in someone else's joke. After the party, when we were finally alone, I told him how hurtful that comment was, how embarrassed I felt being mocked like that in front of strangers. He just rolled his eyes. Said I was being too sensitive, that it was just a joke, that I was blowing things out of proportion. Then he turned it around on me. He said I embarrassed him because I acted cold for the rest of the night. He told me I needed to learn to take a joke, that I killed the vibe, that if I couldn't lighten up, maybe I shouldn't come to events with his friends anymore. Even though he was the one who invited me in the first place. And now I just felt awful, confused, like maybe I really did overreact, or maybe I just saw a side of him I wasn't meant to see yet. But deep down, I knew. I knew how hard it is for me to come out of my shell. I knew how much effort it takes for me to open up, to let people in, to even talk freely in a group of strangers. And I realized I can't stay with someone who doesn't respect that, who doesn't respect me. So I left. After 2 years together, I broke up with him. And honestly, it wasn't an easy decision. That night at the party had left me confused, but this time, I chose not to silence that feeling in my gut. This time, I chose me. We broke up over text, not the most ideal way to end a relationship, but it felt fitting, because even then, he couldn't see what he'd done wrong. He kept bringing up his friends from that contract job, the ones he's only known for a few months, like they meant more to him than I ever did, like their laughter meant more than my feelings. And then, just like that, the final message came in. By IDGAF. That was it after everything. And strangely, I felt relieved. Because that one line told me everything I needed to know. So thank you to everyone who shared their kindness and support. When I first told this story, I was feeling so low. I cried more than I'd like to admit, but reading your words, your encouragement, helped more than you know. I'm a sensitive person, I know that, but this time I didn't let that be a weakness. I stood up for myself. I walked away from someone who made me feel small just to get a few laughs. And even though it hurt, I'm proud of that decision. To anyone else listening, you deserve someone who respects your voice, not someone who tries to silence it. Story 2. 2 months ago, my girlfriend, now my ex, broke up with me. Completely out of nowhere. We'd been together for 2.5 years. There were no warning signs, no slow build up to the end. One day everything was fine and the next it was over. She packed up, moved back to her hometown, still in the same state but far enough to feel like she was gone for good. I was left trying to make sense of it. Trying to heal. Trying to move forward. And while I was picking up the pieces emotionally, I was also trying to find work. I'd been unemployed at the time, and eventually I applied for a job. I knew she used to have a position at the local hardware store for an external company that manages shelf maintenance. It wasn't something I thought too hard about. I just needed the work. I needed a paycheck. I took the opportunity and hoped it would help me get back on my feet. I got the job. And that's when I found out. She had just been promoted. She's now a regional manager. The person who used to be in that role left, and she stepped right into it. And that's not even the worst part. My first day was set for Monday, and guess who was assigned to train me? Her, along with another regional manager. The second I found out, my stomach dropped. Since then, the anxiety has been unbearable. I couldn't sleep. I felt sick. I realized I wasn't as over her as I thought I was. And the thought of walking into a training session, with the person who left me, still fresh in my mind, was more than I was ready for. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I was going to face her. I just knew I had to try. So Monday came and I showed up. I told myself I'd just keep my head down, focus on learning the job, get through the day. To my surprise, the other regional manager, the one I hadn't met before, was actually great, professional, calm, easy to work with. That helped a lot. Everything was going fine until around 9 a.m. That's when he casually mentioned he'd have to head to the train station soon, and just like that, I knew what that meant. He was going to pick up her, my ex. I must have given something away in my expression, because he paused and then asked me something unexpected. He asked if he could get a little personal. Then he asked what kind of relationship I had with her. I didn't dodge it. I told him the truth. She's my ex-girlfriend. And then he asked the next question I was dreading. Is that going to be a problem for you? I paused, I thought about it, and I decided to be honest. I said, yeah, it is. It's still really fresh and I'm not over it yet. He nodded. He actually thanked me for being honest. He said he'd sensed there was something between us but didn't want to make assumptions, and that's why he brought it up. Then, without hesitation, he told me he'd move her to a completely different department. That way, we'd barely have to interact. He said it was no problem at all, and that we'd just do our best to make things work. And just like that, a weight lifted. He even mentioned that the role she's in isn't even set in stone yet. She's currently attending a training and coaching session, just a temporary thing for now. On top of that, the company is restructuring. The regions are being reduced, and managers will eventually shift into floating roles. So even if she does stay in that position, there's a good chance she'll be working somewhere else entirely. And honestly, that helped more than I expected. That feeling of panic I'd been carrying started to ease up. I was finally able to breathe again. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever fully be okay seeing her again. But right now, I feel better. Sometimes life throws you a curveball when you're already down. But sometimes it also throws you a lifeline when you least expect it. And for now, that's enough. Thank you to everyone who encouraged me, gave me advice, or just listened. You made it a little easier to get through the hardest part. Story 3. I'm all over the place right now, and honestly, I need help. My girlfriend and I have been together for 18 months, and up until recently, everything had been perfect. We clicked from the start, same sense of humor, similar hobbies, different careers that made our conversations interesting. Every time she came over, I'd sit and listen to her talk about her day. She's smart, funny, gorgeous, and somehow she picked me. I still can't believe it most days. That's why what happened completely knocked me off balance. It came out of nowhere. We don't live together yet, but we're only about 15 minutes apart. Most nights we're at each other's places. The other day, she left her hard drive at my place, the one she uses to store all her movies and shows. She's a huge sci-fi fan and has always tried to get me into her favorite series, but honestly, I've never been that into it. Still, I wanted to surprise her. I thought, maybe I'll try watching one of her favorite shows so we can bond over it. Something light. I didn't want to start something with 1,000 seasons like Doctor Who, so I scrolled through and landed on Firefly. It's just one season, seemed manageable. But then I saw it. A folder buried in the middle of everything. Labeled simply, It stood out. It wasn't named like any of her other folders, and curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it, expecting something like a random collection of memes or maybe, let's be honest, adult content. But it wasn't either of those. It was full of photos, videos, screenshots of text conversations. And every single one of them was about her stepsister. Thousands of them. At first I thought I must be dreaming or misreading something, but the deeper I looked, the more confused I got. It wasn't just a couple pictures, it was over 7,000 files. Most of them were totally innocent, day-to-day stuff, candid shots of her stepsister napping on the couch, swimming, sunbathing, some in pajamas, some in a t-shirt and underwear. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but something about it made me uncomfortable. Especially because many of them seemed like they were taken without her knowing. It felt off. And then there were the screenshotted texts, messages from her stepsister saying things like, I don't know what I'd do without you, or no one makes me laugh like this. Messages that, if I'd seen them in an actual conversation thread, I wouldn't have thought twice, but seeing them saved or archived, it just felt different. I didn't know what to make of it. My girlfriend and her stepsister have been living together since they were kids. My girlfriend was around 9 or 10 when her mom married her stepdad. The stepsister was a few years older, around 13 or 14 at the time. They're close, I knew that. She's always spoken about her like she's some kind of superhero, charming, successful, gorgeous, warm. Even I have to admit, her sister has that magnetic energy, the kind of person who lights up a room. I've never thought much of it until now. I started wondering, is there something more going on? Is there a line being crossed emotionally, or something I've just been blind to? And I had no idea how to bring it up. I felt like I was spiraling. So I turned to the internet, I asked for help, and the comments poured in. A lot of people told me I was overthinking it, that I was jumping to conclusions, that maybe I was letting anxiety drive the narrative, and maybe they were right. I've always struggled with worst-case scenario thinking. It's something I've been trying to work on, and that's really why I posted in the first place, not to accuse my girlfriend of anything, but to ground myself before saying something I couldn't take back. And I'm glad I waited. That night she came over, I decided to just be honest. I told her the truth, that I had tried to watch Firefly as a surprise, and while looking through the hard drive, I found the folder labeled Us. The moment I mentioned it, her face changed. She looked surprised, not defensive, just startled, but not in the way someone would be if they were hiding something inappropriate. She got excited that I wanted to watch the show. She offered to set it up immediately. It was like she had forgotten the folder even existed. And in that moment, I knew I was wrong. There was no guilt, no hesitation, no panic, just pure joy that I was finally willing to try her favorite series with her. But still, I needed to ask. So I gently said, "Hey, I found that folder called It was filled with photos and texts from Lizzie, your stepsister. I just wanted to ask what it was about." She went quiet. Then she started to cry. She explained everything. A few weeks ago, she'd gotten a message from an old friend, someone she knew back in high school. Her name was Gina, and she'd recently reconnected with my girlfriend through Facebook. Gina is deeply religious. She told my girlfriend that Lizzie's fiancé, John, is actively involved in gay conversion therapy seminars and workshops. Apparently, he's well known in local Christian communities for running these programs that tell gay kids they're broken, sinful, defective, and try to force them into denying who they are. My girlfriend didn't know, neither did I. John had always been introduced to us as just a therapist, just a churchgoer. My girlfriend said her parents had no idea either, and they've always been loving and accepting of her. She was horrified and heartbroken. She confronted Lizzie, and it didn't go well. Lizzie was defensive. She told my girlfriend that John's beliefs are his beliefs, and she had no right to question them. It became clear that Lizzie knew what John was doing and didn't care. My girlfriend was devastated. Lizzie has always been her role model, someone she's looked up to since childhood, and now she felt betrayed, not just by John, but by the one person she thought would protect her from people like him. So she did the only thing she could. She didn't want to delete all the memories, all the years of love and admiration, but she also couldn't stand seeing Lizzie's face every time she opened her computer, so she created a folder. A place to hide everything, not because of shame, but because it hurt too much to see. That's all it was. And when she told me, I just held her while she cried. We don't know what's going to happen next. My girlfriend's still deciding whether to tell her parents. On one hand, she doesn't want to create a rift in the family. On the other, she doesn't want to pretend everything is fine when she knows the man her sister is marrying thinks people like us are broken. But one thing I know for sure, there's nothing inappropriate between her and Lizzie. Nothing hidden, nothing romantic. Just heartbreak, just pain, just disappointment. Tonight I'm setting up a little surprise, a projector, a blanket fort, and a Firefly marathon on the living room wall. I ordered pizza. We're going to snuggle under the blankets and escape for a while because sometimes that's all you can do when the real world feels too heavy. To everyone who took the time to listen, to respond, to help me think straight, thank you. You helped me stop spiraling and helped me see what was really going on. And I'll never forget that.